Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. It's Rufus Opus and John R. King, who's also known as Imperial Art. John, thank you very much for spending some time with me this afternoon. I thought it would be nice to go over some of the things that we've been talking about lately. And there was actually some requests for someone to interview you, so here we go. Here we are.
Thank you.
So let's.
So what would you like to talk about?
Well, let's kick it off with a little bit of biographical stuff, a little bit of introductions, who you are, what your history is, your training, where you came from, that kind of thing. You know, I mean, you and I go back to the ancient days of Ask a Witch on AOL. I think that was the first place that we ran into each other. So, and that was, I was thinking about it earlier today. I think that was like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that was more of a Wild West sort of situation, you know.
Yes, back when the internet was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. But when I met you, you were Pegasus 93. You were primarily into chaos magic. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And even today, I still think that I think of myself as more experimental. I know that I get branded as being somebody who's very much a stuck in the mud traditionalist. I'm not really like that. I feel like the entire effort to examine traditional ceremonial magic has much more to do with experimentation, looking at those old books, seeing if they actually work, seeing if they do work, what they can do for us, following the procedures and protocols that they say are necessary, and seeing what they do. I think that the more that people explore what's already written, what's already known, the better that will be in terms of understanding what we can actually do as magicians and move forward with that knowledge.
Yeah, I agree, actually. One of the things that I ran into over the years was an old, I don't remember what hosting site you were using at the time, but you had written up some monographs of the different spirits that you'd conjured, and your method and procedure that you had used was very, it sounded like something that you would read or hear read at the Royal College and you know, back in London or something. It was very thorough, and I thought it actually brought a whole new level to a lot of the talk about the spirits that people were conjuring and what they were experiencing. I admired that a great deal.
So you asked for my background.
Yeah. So how did you get from the chaos magic of Pegasus 93 to actually diving into the grimoires?
Well, what you're perhaps unaware of is during that entire time when I was involved with the whole chaos magic thing, my one big thing was still ceremonial magic. Chaos magic is not really its own game, I guess you'd say. My whole effort since I was, 12, has been studying this stuff. What really got me into my profession, I've been a jeweler for about 20 years now. It was making all of the different paraphernalia and other tools that go along with this, and finally that ended up turning into a career. My esoteric background, my original teacher was a man named Harlan Draper. I still regard him, if he's still alive, as the most powerful magician I've ever known. He's a very interesting person. He works as the final recipient of a very long line of Native American practitioners. Weird guy, lives in a swamp. Really interesting person, though, and I got my background with him, but unfortunately, most of what he does, being Native American based, it involves a lot of tobacco. And after about a week and a half, I found that if I didn't have tobacco every day, that I started getting agitated. So ceremonial use or not, I ended up having to just ditch that whole thing and said, nope, don't want to be addicted to tobacco, not into this, sorry, can't continue. And I haven't spoken with him in 15 years or so, but if you happen to find him, I know that he's not online, but if you do find him, he's a very interesting person.
Mm-hmm. And where was this at? Was this out on the West Coast or East Coast or?
Oh, no, no. I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and he lived in Rossville.
Oh, okay.
He had been accosted by the local Christian fundamentalists who thought that he was a devil worshiper and a black magician, want to run him out of town. He won a legal battle against him.
Oh, man. Yeah, my sister lived in Memphis for a while, and she fit right in. Holy roller to the max, so I feel your pain. So, all right, so when you talk about your experience as a jeweler, I think one of the things that interested me the most was you had recorded an operation that you did with a spirit where you actually engraved the spirit seal on an emerald.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the like? All right, so to me, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, so an emerald is a tiny little stone and it's already cut into facets, and it's very small usually if you're working with gem grade a stone, and it's very expensive, and to actually engrave then upon that a seal of the spirit, you're going to have a very tiny tool and a magnifying glass and all this stuff, and it just seems super impossible to me. And then I realized that I'm probably overthinking this. So could you kind of explain what a traditional grimoirist would have had to do to engrave a spirit seal on an emerald? I mean, is it as complicated as all that, or is it actually a lot easier in real life?
Well, in real life, modern time, what you're probably going to want to do is break out the power tools of Solomon and just go ahead and engrave little diamond burrs and things. Those are probably the easiest way. If you want to go the traditional route, looking back over like cameos, or Alexander the Great is carved on a ruby or whatever, way back in the ancient time, the way that it was done is there was diamond dust encoding if that's a word, basically a diamond-coated piece of copper, and you engrave it. I actually used kind of a Dremel tool type of thing, a rotary tool, with a diamond burr to do my engraving. The solution, if you're talking about buying a pre-cut faceted emerald, especially in like a commercial market, yes, it's going to be small. I had a direct line to an emerald dealer, and I didn't deal with small gems. And that was making things a lot easier. At one time, I was actually invited to go to Muzo mine and mine direct out of there. I didn't feel like dealing with the helicopters and machine guns. We just thought that it was a little bit too much for us. But yeah, I got involved with the rough stones, cutting the stones. I ended up with a huge amount of these stones and just started faceting them myself.
Okay, so they were just the raw uncut diamonds. I mean, raw uncut emeralds.
Yes.
Yeah.
A variety of other gems, some rough diamonds. I never got into diamond cutting. Gemstone cutting, yes, but aside from specialty gems, really the market is still dominated by overseas imports. There's not really a lot of fine gem cutting going on in the jewelry industry anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But as for the way to do it, it's really very simple. You take one of those diamond burrs and fit your stone to where you want to set it, start engraving whatever it is that you want to engrave on it. Mm-hmm. It's really not a complicated process.
Do you recommend, is there a method of practicing? Like I carved a crystal skull out of quartz, and I think that experience kind of got me used to sort of what it's like to carve these crystalline structures. Did you practice before you started out on the actual emerald?
Some. I had done some carvings before. I've been doing stone carvings and stuff for a long time, even as a little kid. I'd carve out things out of pieces of granite with chisels. And I'm kind of used to working with the materials. Maybe a bit more background in that than the average ceremonial magician in terms of being able to actually work in metals or stones or different things like that. My Wizard's Workshop book, one of the original titles I had was Magic Without Paint. The idea that there's this whole world of craft that goes into ceremonial magic that has nothing to do with brightly colored emblems and all of this. But back in the day, people had to actually take out their gravers and their chisels and knives and things and carve stuff. You had a lot of manufacture going into the grimoires, where so many elements of the grimoire you have to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've become kind of spoiled in modern age. People just want to buy the stuff. You look at places online, they sell it, it looks good, but I think you remove from the process a lot of the key elements of the process. You look at, say, the preface to the Key of Solomon, and it says things like, "Accursed be he who lacks the requisite qualities." Well, that's not necessarily some spiritual quality. I think that some of those requisite qualities are training in, say, metalcraft or needlecraft or other basic skills that even back in the 17th century were just not that common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of the spirits actually helped you get those skills. I always thought that was very interesting, that when you look through the descriptions of the spirits, you find them telling you how to actually do all the things that you need to do to conjure them, and more, I don't want to say physical, but more interactive appearances. So speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about your results. Have you ever, so I understand that you approached it very seriously and followed the instructions and gained the skills and everything, but did you also experiment with it using more modern techniques or less traditional ways of conjuring?
Yes. Back in older times, back before I was able to actually get all of the stuff, I've tried a variety of ways to approach this. I've tried the black mirror scrying thing. I had this old dental mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried the crystal ball gazing. I've tried the, let's just see if we can use visualization or whatever. I've tried a lot of different things. I really find that the majority of them just come across as, well, we don't have what we need, so let's use what we've got and see what shakes loose.
Right.
Fine, but my whole effort with this project really was to examine the books on their own terms, to go through and say, it says to do this. It says you need the lion skin belt or whatever. Okay, so let's get that. It says you need a ring of gold or silver. Let's do that. A ring of linen. It doesn't say cotton. It says linen, so let's do that. Just taking the book at its face value and giving it a run for its money.
Right.
Trying to experiment. In reality, though, I think that a person approaching this should not do it that way. I think that a much better approach, if a person is going to get involved in conjuring the spirits or whatever, is to find maybe a few of them, one of them even, and say, I'm going to work with this spirit exclusively, and go with that. Like if you're an English teacher, you might want something that brings you philosophy and rhetoric. You're not going to need something that causes ships to sink at sea, or postulating sores to occur, or something like that.
Right.
There's no need just to experiment with the book simply for the
thrill of it.
Thrill of experimenting with it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. What you're talking about is actually having a strategy behind your approach to this, and actually thinking about it in terms of, what do I need? What do I want out of this? And what spirit is best suited for me? I think when I got into Galatia finally, I mean the Galatia of Solomon at least, I was on a quest to conjure every one of them, and I think I got through I don't know, 38, 39 of them before I realized that it was just, at that point, it was just for show, for show and tell, and I didn't want to be doing it for show and tell. And I started focusing more and more on the spirits that worked with me to accomplish what I was actually after in real life, because I think that there is something to your basic life as it's unfolding that matters more to the spirits that you're conjuring. And if you're conjuring a spirit that sinks ships at sea, for example, like you just said, and you're in the middle of Minneapolis, unless you want to go to one of the 10,000 lakes and sink a boat, and you actually need to do that on a regular basis, it's not going to be a spirit that's very meaningful to you. And it's not like you're going to be very meaningful to that spirit either, For me, I've worked with Bune for years and years because of the eloquence, and I like to write, and it's served me very well. I'm very happy with my experience with him. But I don't think I don't have as good of a relationship with like Visago, even though I've conjured him for understanding things that were beyond my ken, But I think because Bune actually does address, eloquence, and the kind of thing that I was looking for at the time, I was able to establish a better relationship with him, and he actually appreciated my interest more than a spirit would that was not actually needed in my life, if that makes sense. Anyway.
I have perhaps a different perspective than the average person on the way that this whole ceremonial aspect of the work works. Something I'd like to talk about. I believe that the way that this system operates is by binding the spirits. I know that's not a very popular philosophical approach to the whole system. It's my understanding that these are pagan deities, false gods, lesser gods. These are spirits that represent influences on our lives from birth, and that they affect not just us personally, but the whole of everyone. And part of what we do as magicians in conjuring them is to suppress their influence rather than to invoke it. For example, a spirit that thrives on inability to speak well or an inability to communicate well might facilitate communication with those in power. A spirit that thrives on misery, destitution, poverty, you bind that spirit growing wealth, and so forth. These are all of them in some way an influence that we are negotiating either a stop of their actions or we are just simply stamping them out entirely, rather than viewing the book itself as a phone book from which we can hire contractors. I don't know if I've made sense with that. It definitely, material there.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, but I of course have a completely different opinion. But you said, and I'm not going to argue with you because that's not what this is about. But you said you see them as like the pagan gods. Is that like Ashtaroth and being Ishtar, that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They are the deities of the pagans. They're the gods of the world, all of them. And some of them might be less recognized or under-recognized or whatever you want to say, but all of them were at some point worshipped as gods. Mm-hmm. I think that's even stated in the book that they were eventually released to their former places, and some of them continue to receive worship and all of that. Yes, I do believe that they are the deities. The system itself is entirely monotheistic. The way in which the whole process of conjuration is, it's designed to work on a monotheistic basis. For example, you and I, we both know that we have parents, that we did not design the universe. We did not create ourselves. We did not create this phone line that we're talking on. We're using it. We're interlopers here. And that same understanding exists between us and the spirits. The spirits understand that they are not supreme, that they did not create the world, they don't rule it. However big you want to define the world, they're not the most important thing in that world, and neither are we. So we have this mutual understanding that between us both there's a higher power, and that it is toward that higher power that our oaths are secured. If the spirit is agreeing to do something, what binds it? What power do we have? There's no amount of gold and silver that you can throw at these things that are going to make them any more tractable.
Right,
there's no threat. Well, you're going to end up burning a box in your living room or your basement or whatever, and it's got all this terrible stinking substances, and then you're stuck there thinking, why didn't that force it to happen when this guy down the road has a church and he lays hands on people and banishes the demons and they listen to him? And what is it that differentiates between the two? And I think that the key to that is that the magician's oath and the spirit's oath are both responsible toward a higher power.
Okay, so basically because the magician swears to God to serve God or whatever, I don't know what the oath is, but also because the spirit is bound by some oath to its creator, that it's the source that they have in common, or the oath to that, to obey that entity that makes them, I guess, obey or work with you.
In order to even take you seriously, in order to even acknowledge you. And you mentioned like just going at it for the thrill of it, it's conjuring these spirits and see how many you can call up and what they can do. People who want the visions or whatever. If you were to get, say, married, join the military under false pretenses, where you're not really in it, you don't intend to actually be married, you have some kind of shotgun wedding type of thing, no one considers that valid. The court doesn't, your relatives don't, you don't. It's a game. It's something you're doing to enjoy something. It's not a valid, binding oath. I think that a great deal of people's failure in this art, if you want to call it that, it comes from their inability to separate a desire to see if it works and see something cool and just experience something interesting, and a sincere desire to actually take accountability for this. And a great example, you ask what kind of oath is in this this whole system. One of the things that you tell the spirit in getting rid of it is peace between thee and me forevermore. You are swearing at that point to maintain peace with the spirit forever. So at the day of judgment, when all things are called into judgment, you are standing up to say, I do not hold the spirit accountable. I'm not its enemy. Are you going to then side with it? Where do you stand? You are making a pledge that will affect you at the end of all things. And if you don't make that pledge, if you don't say, well, yes, I'm in this to the very bitter end, however many lifetimes that this might involve, if you're not serious about your part of it, why would the spirit be serious about its part of it if you're not acknowledging the solemnity of the event? Then it's not bound to accept your call or your conjuration. You have no force behind it.
So do you give any credence to the idea that getting ordained as a priest or in some kind of apostolic succession, or in some way becoming yourself a representative of that higher power, do you think that there's any value in that in this goetic work that we're attempting to do?
Yes, and I had 2 callings in the Mormon Church. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's been a long time since we spoke.
Yeah. No, I don't even know what a calling is in the Mormon Church. What does that mean?
In the Mormon Church, a calling is kind of like a job. I had a calling as counselor, and I had a calling as gospel doctrine teacher. And in both of those, I found numerous opportunities to do the exact same stuff that I do as a magician, except instead of calling it divination and enchantment, it's called revelation and blessing. It's otherwise the exact same work.
Do you still consider yourself a Mormon then, or is that something that is... I mean, were you able to continue to... and this is, I don't know if this is too personal or whatever, but I mean, were you able to do magic while you were in your Mormon phase, or...
Oh, yes. And, most of the people who were involved with the church at that time, they were aware of it. Bring me along. Oh, we're doing healing of the sick. Be sure to bring John.
Right on. So, yeah, I went through...
Where the church really lost me was on a couple of personal things, the whole papyrus of Abraham, which they insist on teaching us truth, just a few doctrinal issues, and just the way that the church gets involved in families. I decided that it was not really where I want to be. What I think is important, first off, the participation in community was good. And I think that that's an opportunity that magicians can have to actually participate in a community, to get involved with some variety of religious expression, whether it's Hinduism or Mormonism or becoming a Baptist. Any kind of religious expression, I think, will help with the magical pursuit, because so much of that does depend on religious motifs, I guess we can call it that. But if you're going to be invoking names of God, the Bible God, and then you go home and you're practicing Hinduism or something else like that, then maybe it's time to switch formats.
Right, because
in
creating
one or
this
another
cognitive
of those options.
dissonance.
There's something like that. I think that the key factor, though, is that you must take what you're doing very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I've known who didn't and thought that they could really just get away with it, playing around with it, they've either gotten very little from their work, despite whatever they might think about it, or they've gotten a very large amount of heartache from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot caution enough about how dangerous this magical subject really is.
Mm-hmm.
You are, when you're involving yourself with it, you're intending to change your life, to make really big decisions that cause wide-ranging effects in your life, to have more money, to have more eloquence, or whatever it is, that this is something that you've chosen as a life path. And if you're not careful about what kind of decisions you make, and you make dumb choices, then those dumb choices, you might be stuck with them.
Oh yeah. You're familiar with the story of how my house burned down after I asked for $4,000.
Yes.
Yeah. that was a really poor choice I made there, But I mean, technically it was effective. It just wasn't what I wanted at all. But yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and plug something real quick here, because you just mentioned the value of having a religious structure when you're pursuing this stuff. I recently joined the OTO and have become ordained within the EGC as a deacon so far, and I'm working my way towards priest. I also received an ordination by some wandering bishops that are in the Gnostic tradition. And personally, I also would agree that it's very important to get involved in a community of people within your I don't know if tradition is the right word, but of the similar mindset, where you're actually going on a regular basis to participate in community and do a specific thing that is consistent with the beliefs that you are working with. The experiences I've had with the spirits since I went through the ordination as a priest in particular changed a great deal. And one of the things that you just said about when you stand in front of them at the end of time, peace between us for all time, are you willing to stand up next to that spirit? One of the things that came through to me in my ordination was they called it, I can't remember the exact words, but it was the ability, what you bind in heaven is bound on earth, and what you release in heaven is released on earth. And the ability to, I don't know if bless the spirit is the right phrase for it, but just to raise it up as you are raised, that partnership that's implied in that peace between us for all eternity kind of thing was, it developed a very much more rich and specific meaning, I think, after having gone through that ordination. So yeah, I would definitely agree that it's important to include yourself in some kind of religio practice that is related to what you're doing. But,
so let's see, if a couple of the things that you discussed, I don't know exactly where to go with this, but on that topic, at one point I had called a spirit to build myself a great house, a tower even.
Mm-hmm.
I was making a huge move, moving off to the island, thousands of miles away, on a little tiny island, going to run a store, It was a big choice. And somewhere near the end of it, almost nearing the press the go button day, I decided to chicken out. I was seriously considering this is far too much for me. I'm in over my head. I'm just going to stay here in Las Vegas and attempt to make the whole thing work. And I immediately started having these horrible dreams, really vivid dreams of everyone that I ever knew or cared about being dismembered or killed in horrible ways.
Mm-hmm.
And in each one of the dreams, the spirit was there, and it was saying to me, this is what will happen if you go back on our deal. I'm counting on you because I need you to do this, because my redemption is at stake. So I believe also that the spirits have personal stakes, that when we say, I'm going to work with you, that it has maybe something to prove by participating with us in that sense. It has some part in it where they're not just randomly out there doing their thing and then they find, oh, look, it's a magician calling me again. I'm going to go and mess with this guy. I'll troll him all day. That they view our interaction with them in some way, and it's important to them. You know, the average Bible thumper will definitely tell you that your prayers are important to God. Well, this idea that a billion people all praying to God, somehow God has the individual attention given to each one of them, I don't think it's so far-fetched to, you know, go on and say that these spirits are actually interested in us, in our lives, and our dramas personally. So that I'll throw that out there. As far as results, of all of the results, you know, we could talk about the nanowires developed by the Israeli scientists, the discovery of the comets that was predicted. You know, go through my old blog. There's plenty of results calculated there, and the book Imperial Art has a whole section for tallying up results. Just tons and tons of stuff that I'd like to talk about. Some things went really good, some things went really bad. The gold mine is a huge thing. Are you familiar with this? I don't know how much of the stuff that I've written.
I've very little, actually. But yeah, go ahead. What was the gold mine incident?
I called one of the spirits to find a treasure. I think, quote myself, I said something worth millions of dollars in a place that's nearby and accessible to me. Just figuring, well, this is America. There's got to be something worth millions of dollars within a day's drive. Okay. And I was given very specific instructions on how to reach a vein of gold. This has been mocked. This has been ridiculed. You know, people just dismiss it as if it's fantasy, and it's absolutely not. It's a reality. There is a vein of gold several thousand feet deep sitting in Del Norte County, California. I had to scale a 900-foot cliff, nearly vertical, to get to it. It's about 8 miles off the road. Not very easy to get to, but it was accessible within a day's drive of where I was living at the time. Mm-hmm. I give decent directions to it in the book. So I thought, well, they took the fishing from Crescent City. They took the logging. The government has basically said everything that we do here that's good and productive must be shut down. I saw the tiny town of 4,000 people where I was living turning into a den of meth addicts, corrupt city council, no jobs, everybody shopping at Walmart, they're all on welfare. It was a very pathetic kind of place at times. And I thought, if we had a real industry here, if we had something like a very productive mine, it would produce a regional economy. We'd have the people who drive the trucks, the people who do the mining, the administrative, the bankers. Everybody would get some cash in their pocket out of this. And being in the Smith River area, it would have to be done according to secure environmental protocols, so we could become a premier site for a model of better mining worldwide. And I thought, this would be great. I'll go to my blog. I will tell people about this. See if they're interested. All these magicians out there all want to get rich, and they're all conjuring for riches. And here, I found them. We just have to go and get them. And I tried to secure loans. I finally got 2 people who would agree to give me the $10 million that it would take to buy the land that the mine is actually on. One of them, he wanted a lot of personal information that I didn't feel comfortable giving to a Chinese investor, and he didn't really want to mine the gold. He wanted to sell certificates based on the gold. I wanted to actually do the mining.
Right.
The other one wanted to be paid back at interest within 5 years, and I didn't feel like his terms were agreeable otherwise. So I decided, what the hell, I'll go around town and try to get people to collect some investors on this. So I was somewhere over by Walmart near Crescent City, and this guy gets into my car. He tells me that he's from Chase Bank, shows me his ID, and basically said he'd sent a lot of people out to find my mine, that they hadn't come back. And he wanted directions or nasty things would happen to my family. So I told him basically the opposite direction of where the mine was. 2 weeks later, I left town. We left for Las Vegas. Just packed up and left. I don't like people threatening my whole family.
Right.
So after that, about 3 months, maybe a little bit more, there was an article that the government spent $1.8 billion renovating 150 feet of road right next to the site where the mine was, like the access point.
Oh,
so $1.8 billion to renovate a road that goes to nowhere in the middle of Northern California for no reason. I mean, I drove on that road once a week at least. So I think that they found out what was going on.
I hope so.
So yeah, results. There's results. The results don't exactly always give you exactly what you want, just the way that you want it right then. So I started thinking about that. Started thinking about why it is that these spirits give me a little bit of what I want, but not all of it, and not exactly the way that I want. And that's what ultimately drove me to go toward, say, a more religious aspect of it, looking for assistance of angels, good spirits. Let's see if I can find a way to increase my authority over the spirits. And that seems to have done pretty well.
So do you now use the I guess the commanding angel, I guess is sort of how they refer to it, that particular approach where you, like in the Testament of Solomon, where you use like Uriel to command whatever his name was?
No. And also just on that note, no, I don't mix a whole bunch of stuff together and try to find it. I'm going to, I take the one book. I have Sloan 2731. This is actually a book put together by Wade Long. It's just a photocopy, facsimile of the complete Lesser Key of Solomon. What I'm using is basically that. I took the parts that I liked out of it, the whole conjuration and everything. I neatened it up and I wrote my own, volume of it in calligraphy. And I said, this is my book. This is what I'm going to use. I work exclusively out of that. I don't incorporate any other kinds of other techniques or whatever. As far as the angels and whatnot, in terms of that, no, I don't use a commanding angel. I don't do any kind of invocation of that sort. What I'm talking about is calling upon the angels to make my life, my attitude, my behavior better in general.
Right, to kind of
being a more responsible person, leading to higher degrees of responsibility. You mentioned, say, for example, calling the spirit to increase your ability to write well for books. Well, part of making use of that is actually writing books. Right. If you're not in a position to do that, if you're not committed to actually writing books and making use of the eloquence, then the spirit's not going to find any use for you. It's going to say, oh, okay, you want to write something, I'll give you a joke or something, I'll inspire you in one way or another, but really you're not going to become the next Stephen King.
Well, the spirits definitely provided me with 4 hours of shit I had to write, or else I couldn't sleep, basically, a night when I was doing that. So yes, I definitely understand what you're saying there. But how much of that is you making room for the spirits to manifest things in your life versus, I don't know, just as opposed to this idea that like it's a magic wishing lamp and you just say your words and nothing happens. Because one of the things that I've always run into is, you know, you do some magic for money and all of a sudden you get all these money making opportunities that come in, but it's always with work. You know, like you had to go out and find the investors, you had to figure out how to get the land, you had to put your own family on the line to figure out what needed to happen to make things manifest the way you wanted it to manifest. You know, I mean, what's your experience with that type of how to actually get the spirits? I don't know if power is the right word, but to actually get their influence to appear in your life.
I kind of thought that was really what I was saying before.
Oh yeah.
Just having your own life in a position to be usable for the kind of things that you want to call the spirits to do for you. It's that old joke about the guy who prays for the lottery every day. He wants to win the lottery, and he dies, goes to heaven, he stands before God, and he says, God, I prayed for the lottery every day. And God says to him, well, you should have bought a ticket. That there is a lot of stuff that we have to do. And if you are wanting something, this is just my advice to whoever is listening, if you're wanting something just to happen, just because, and you don't plan on doing anything with it afterward, if you don't plan on it becoming a responsibility, then you don't really know what you're wanting. You're not wanting the right thing. If you want, for example, if you want a gun, yeah, you can go and get one. You get a gun. Well, once you've got one, then you have a responsibility to use that or keep it in a way that is consistent with the way that that thing goes. If you want a bunch of money or if you want a better job, you've got to be willing and to some degree in a position to make use of that. So if you are lazy, antisocial, if you have certain problems, you call those the more powerful, the angels and all of the other celestial spirits, and they help fix those problems, show you how to deal more effectively with people, be more responsible, to cut out the things in your life that are keeping you from having some kind of success in whatever it is that you're trying to call them from.
Yeah, I think that my own experience is very similar to that. I went through the drawing spirits into crystals, the Trithemian piece, and by the time I'd been through the 7 spheres a few times, I found myself a completely different person, much better suited to deal with the vagaries of life. But you were talking about the book that you work from. Did you actually publish that book, or is that something that is a personal book?
It's, you know, I had debated for a long time whether or not to publish it. It is now published. There are 2 volumes of it, the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Greater Key. The Greater Key, I call it the Great Key. The Lesser Key is called Helisol. That's after the original name of the book that's in the Lesser Key, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, they're published separately in paperback and with higher image resolution on the Magical Traditions of Solomon the Wise. All of those are on the book website. And it's basically just a photocopy of my own working text. The things to say are written in purple ink. There's instruction written in green. Lots of colored borders, all of the pentacles done in large colored format. My own depictions of the spirits from my experiences. They're all in there. The only unfortunate thing about it is that the original work is covered in gold leaf. It's very ornately produced, and very little of that comes forth in the printed version. That's the drawback of using Lulu software.
So is that the book that has the Ark of the Covenant with the 2 pillars on it?
Yeah, that's the same one.
Okay, so right now you can't see it, but on the video, people will be seeing a selection of all your books laid out. I think you had put it together for your presentation at Esoteric thing in Seattle. I can't remember the name of it.
And yeah, the Esoteric Book Conference, by the way, all of the profit from all of the book sales during the year, it goes toward buying more books and giving them away for free. So I'm making absolutely nothing off of publishing this stuff. That's another thing that I'd love to throw it out there now that I've got a couple of minutes for a soapbox. If you are a magician and your interest is to become king of the magicians, you need to get some other hobbies.
Oh, I agree.
Do not get into this with the intent to become the super nerd who knows all about all the Kabbalistic whatever. That's not what this is about. I would rather find somebody tell me, look, I've done a couple of invocations and now I'm considered the best roofer in my city. That's great. I am much more behind that person than the person who tells me they know everything from Paracelsus or whatever. I really don't care about occultism, that it's there, and the reason why it's been valuable for so long in human history is because it's good for something. A bunch of empty book knowledge, I don't really see that as being good for anybody, except librarians. So I think that what I'm getting at here is if you're involved in magic, get involved in something else as well. Turn off the computer, get away from the phone, put all of the books down for a bit and do something interesting, and then when you go back to magic, then you have something that your magic can actually do for you to make you increase in a skill or in reputation or to build a bigger project or something of that nature, rather than just becoming a more successful occult brand or celebrity or whatever. That's absolutely not what it's about.
I use the word brand, but in my defense, the reason that I'm concerned about having an occult brand is because I actually feel like the stuff that I do helps make people's lives better. Like you're saying, if people can get their hands on a piece of technology or technique that explains what the requirements are in a reasonable way that they can identify with and put it into use to make their lives better, then it benefits everybody, and my goal in having a brand, as it were, is not so much to aggrandize, Rufus Opus, blah, 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 because I'm just, you knew me 20 years ago, and I'm really not that different. Honestly, I'm still just your basic Shlemiel, but there's value in the things that I've written that people have gotten their hands on and they've used it to make their lives better. And so to that end, I think it's worth having a larger soapbox, and I also think that your work is valuable. I've seen a lot of people have participated with it. Frater Ashen Hassan, I'm probably saying his name terribly wrong, but he actually introduced me to my current fiance, and his work is very useful too. It expands the I don't know, the platform that lets people understand what this thing is that we're working on and how to use it as a lever to accomplish, like you were saying, to become like the best roofer, or the best writer or the best whatever, So to me, the brand is just about having a broadcast signal, something that's.
I think that the test of that in the deep of time will be, are people actually improving their lives as a result of it? And I think that what you're doing there, that makes a lot of sense. And I look at what I do, and I think I've got to kind of be responsible for making something happen that's worth something to other people.
Right.
I don't think that the world needs new books of magic. I do think that the world really needs education. If I had to pick something to tell you about that's like a pet project of mine, I'm really interested in educational charities, especially those that fund scientific research. I feel like magicians are in a position to have an easier time getting through the different red tapes that we encounter in going through life, whether you're going through professional development or schooling or whatever it is that you're moving toward. magicians have a technology at their hands that allows them to do that a little bit more easier than the average person.
Right.
So, you say you're interested in helping people make their lives better. Well, good, but what does making your life better actually look like? It doesn't just, oh, well, I've been illuminated to the seventh sphere of whatever, and now I'm going to turn on the TV and I sit here in my trailer or whatever. Their life isn't really so much better. What I'm interested in seeing is people who are changing their lives, not just feeling better about it, but actually making a difference where they become bigger, more important, more useful to someone other than just occultists.
Yeah, I actually had the good fortune to go to Indianapolis a few weeks ago, and a couple of the people that showed up had been members of my courses, or had read Seven Spheres, or had basically been reading my blog for years, and they both explained to me, and neither one of them are professional magicians. It's not like they're occultists building an occult whatever, but they both explained to me how they happened to find a blog post at the right time in their life that was able to leverage them into something new, or they got their hands on the Seven Spheres at a time when it was exactly what they needed, And I honestly feel like that's the best I can hope for, is if people get my stuff at a time where it's useful, and like these guys, they changed that, it did change their lives. They went from terrible careers into, one guy went into voice recording, and he's he's pretty much on top of his field now. He's one of the top audio book recorders in his tri-state area or whatever. I don't know. But I mean, the other guy, he more than doubled his income, and he's up the food chain, and he's able to deal with a lot of the issues that drove him nuts when he was at the bottom of the food chain, So both of these people gave me the kind of feedback that is the only thing that I'm interested in, I happened to have come across something you wrote at a time when it was useful to me. So that's basically what I want to hear. When I'm standing on the white throne and I get to say, what did I do this time, and what am I going to do next time? That's basically what I'm going to stand by. And I'm quite pleased with that. But I think you actually are doing the same thing, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you. I saw a lot of your stuff online, and I've seen a lot of people talking about how working with the things that you've made available to people has helped people understand that there is a method to this thing that we're doing, that there's a place for it, and also that we I don't know what the word is. Just that we're trying to get this done as a lever. There's a practical application to it that's useful, in addition to just knowing what all the catalogs of spirits are from Scott and onward and whatnot. So
right. And really, I don't believe that it's a good idea just to follow anything just by rote, just because. I'll give you an example. You've seen a stage play or a musical. Let's just go with a musical, because everybody's at some point probably seen a musical. Same notes, same lines, and it can be done well or it can be done poorly. If you're playing the exact same score, what comes out for one person, even if they're an excellent singer, it can be a terrible show. And the same thing, if you have a mediocre singer, it can be great. It's just a matter of getting everything done in a way that works for what you're doing. And so I don't think that it's important necessarily to follow these recipes just slavishly devoted to exactly what goes on. That it gets into lawyer mode or something where you're picking over it all. I don't think that that's really a good way of going about it.
Yeah.
But to think of it as you are putting on something, that you are making a statement, that you're actually addressing intelligent beings rather than following a cookbook, is a much better means of approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to get the idea that I'm saying at any place that it's appropriate to just pick up the book and do exactly what it says and leave your brain at the door.
Right.
It's really not what any of this is about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I won't get into all the different things that make me agree with you, but yes, I think you're 100% right. I substitute stuff as necessary, made it, and I know we have different views on this, but I mean, anyway, that could be another conversation that would take another hour or so. But I'm kind of running out of time, and I need to head off to my next thing. I wanted to thank you for your time. I want to mention your Lulu webpage is http://www.lulu.com/spotlight/John R. King IV. And also, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, you have an email contact that is monitored. I guess we could leave it at that. It's prototaxite@gmail.com. That's prototaxite@gmail.com. So, yeah, I wanted to kind of broadcast your signal a little bit louder and make some of your information and experiences more available to other people. So I really appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming.
You're very welcome. Anytime.